Hi. Sally here. Okay. I have gotten the 2 introductory videos done and dusted. Time to get on with saying what needs to be said by a woman, the mother of boys, a wife, a successful career woman who has benefited from affirmative action. The number 1 point that needs to be made and communicated all across the Western world is this. Us women stabbed our men in the back. Us women betrayed our men. We used the vote and the government to do this. There is no other way to put this. There is no way to sugarcoat it. Us women were disgusting and vile enough to betray our own husbands, our brothers, our fathers, our sons, our male cousins. We betrayed our men. We stabbed them in the back. We used the vote and the government to do this. Until us women, in a good majority, are willing to admit we did this, until we are willing to admit we knew other women were betraying their men and we remained silent, our men should rightly and justly be massively angry with us. They should rightly condemn us. They should rightly not trust us. They should rightly not take our word for anything. They should rightly not marry us. They should rightly be MGTOW. They should rightly feel free to game our daughters. They should rightly feel perfectly justified in lying to our daughters to manipulate them to their own desires. They should rightly remove us from their companies. They should rightly not give us jobs. They should rightly create men's-only companies, clubs, and social spaces. Who wants to be forced to associate with people who betrayed them and stabbed them in the back? No one. They should rightly tell us go create your own company and compete with us on the open market. Us women have openly condoned our fellow women committing perjury in the family law courts so that women can steal the children of their husbands and enslave the man through the criminal use of force up to and including incarceration. This killed many men like my colleague I described in my introductory video. It was murder by proxy. Nothing less. Us women have watched case after case of false rape accusations by women, and not one of us has demanded that women who make false rape allegations should get the same jail time as the man might suffer if he is found guilty based on these false allegations. Us women have watched a woman lawyer in a court say on a video should leave the court no concerns as to failing the husband in terms of providing him justice and equity, and we let that comment stand without objection. In a courtroom, that comment from a woman was allowed to stand. What was the excuse offered for openly stating that a man was not entitled to justice in a family law court? Let me show you that the husband has presented with that attitude. That's right. The man's attitude. That he opposes being criminally victimized is now an attitude that a woman claimed as sufficient reason to refuse to serve justice in a court. Not one of us women condemned this obviously hateful and spiteful statement. What would any woman say if a man suggested that a woman who was the victim of a rape by a man had an attitude about it and so she was no longer entitled to a path to justice? Us women ran worldwide slug walks in response to one single police officer making a passing comment about dressing more conservatively would reduce the number of assaults on women. Yet we women remain absolutely silent when a woman lawyer, in a family law court, said that the attitude of the man, meaning objecting to being criminally victimized, was the very reason that he should be further criminally victimized. It is right there on the video Joshua took of his family court matter, and it is in the transcript, which is where I cut and pasted it from. Then us women say you men are not allowed to be angry at us. What? We have a word in Australia that us professional women use when we want to express the most serious of outrage. We do not use the F word. We use the word bull dust. The idea that a man like my 2 sons will one day can be criminally victimized for the very reason they are objecting to being criminally victimized is exactly that. Bull dust. Us women have spent the last 150 years demanding what we called equality. We demanded the vote because we did not show faith and trust in the men in our lives to vote in our best interests. We said, I love you honey, but I do not trust you to act in my best interests even though I am your wife. What did us women do when we got the vote? We sold our votes to whatever politician would promise to give us more money from taxes mostly earned by men. We sold our votes to politicians who promised to steal more money from our men to build welfare states where money could be taken from men at the point of a gun and given to women merely because the woman wanted it. Women could even lie in court to get money from the government, and the rest of us remained silent about that. We grew the size of our governments by a factor of 10. We then took up 70 to 80% of the jobs we created in these overblown governments, and we acted like little Hitlers, using the copes and the courts to steal from our men. We said, yes, I love you honey, but I am going to betray you and stab you in the back. I am going to use the vote I asked for to do it. We pretended that this was all somehow justified because majority rules. We pretended that our men were not unique individuals but merely drones to be stolen from because women have more votes. We did not observe the fact that all government is by consent. We coerced our men into tax slavery by pretending to be victims when we were, in fact, the bullies. Thus women used our votes to bully our men using the point of a gun and threat of incarceration via our government, copes and courts, based on the lie that the men who fought for us in WWI and WWII were oppressors who conspired in the evil patriarchy to keep us down, when what they actually did was sacrifice their lives for us. Our men sacrificed their lives in wars. Our men sacrificed their lives in hard labor at dangerous jobs. What did we say about them? Oppressors. You owe us your taxes because your grandfathers and great-great-grandfathers oppressed women. In short, we betrayed our men. We stabbed them in the back. We married the government, which is mostly men, and we demanded the government steal from our men using the threat of and actual incarceration to get what we wanted. Then we women said, you men have no right to be angry. If you are angry, we can dismiss your complaint. Again, BULLDUSD. More than 150 years into our demand for equality, there is not one paper, one presentation, one proposal made by any woman of significance that says women should get the same punishment for the same crime as a man. Thus women have, literally, cut down whole forests to produce books and papers on equality and what we want, what we demand, what makes us happy, and yet not one of us has written the paper proposing women get the same time for the same crime as a man. Thus women have cut down whole forests to write papers about the long-exploded myth of the wage gap, and yet we cannot write a paper on the sentencing gap. We will not even talk about it. We will scream blue murder at any man who points out the sentencing gap. He is obviously a misogynist if he wants women to be locked up in cages. Thus women wonder why our men no longer believe we are sincere. It is because we are liars and hypocrites. In our tens of millions. That is why our men do not believe us women are sincere. Rightly and justifiably so. Thus women demanded all the goodies that a very small percentage of men enjoyed. We demanded the nice comfortable office jobs. We demanded equal pay with all the best jobs. We demanded a welfare state for mothers but not for fathers. We exploded the size of government by a factor of 10, paid for mostly by men's taxes, and we moved into those comfortable office jobs in our millions. 70% to 80% of government jobs are held by women. Thus women complain endlessly and at every opportunity where men are overrepresented and demand that any such inequality is prima facie proof of discrimination. We demand government intervention for positive discrimination and affirmative action. But when the numbers are the other way around, we are silent. Men are 98% of the war dead. Men are 93% of the workplace dead. Men are 90% of the incarcerated. Men are 90% of the homeless. Remember that homeless for a woman means living in a nice cozy government-funded shelter paid for by men's taxes. Homeless for a man means sleeping on the street. Men are 99% of the child support payers. Men are 99% of the alimony payers. There is not one woman's group complaining about the underrepresentation of women and the oppression of the patriarchy creating discrimination like this. Joshua has pointed these numbers out to thousands of women. I have seen him do it. Thus women laugh at Joshua when he points out these numbers. We actually laugh at men and we ridicule them. Men like my sons will become who might be asked to fight in a new large war. Men like our Anzacs who fought and died so that we might live in freedom. Thus women actually desecrate the memory of our fallen war dead by laughing at the fact less than 2% of war dead are women. Oppressors. We cry. Thus women allow women like Hillary Clinton to make such hateful comments as women have always been the primary victims of war, and then we rub the faces of our men in that bull dust by voting for her and making her a leading candidate for the presidency of the United States. Women wonder why our men are angry with us. that we will take this thing called a vote, that we demanded on the basis of equality, and we will use it to support a woman who desecrated the memory of our fallen war dead. Again. Thus women wonder why our men are angry when we do this. Then the only retort we can offer when our men express their anger is, if you are angry then I can dismiss your comments because only women are allowed to be angry. I will say it again. I will ask all men to pass this comment around to all women. I will ask all women to pass this comment to all their women friends. Thus women betrayed our men. Thus women stabbed our men in the back. Thus women used the vote we were given and the government to do this. Until a good majority of women in the Western world own up to this is exactly what happened. Our men will rightly condemn us. I will rightly condemn us women. To the best of my knowledge, no other woman in the world has been willing to condemn us women for our betrayal of our men. I am the first. It is time to make sure millions of other women make this same admission. I do not want my sons to live in a world full of women who think they can make false rape allegations and put my sons in jail with absolutely no chance of being punished themselves. I do not want my sons to live in a world full of women who think they can lie in a family law court and steal my son's children, my grandchildren, my son's house, my son's cash and car, and a large part of my son's future income. I would tell my sons to leave Australia before I would allow them to live in the country as it is today. As much as I wish to see my grandchildren and raise them, I would rather my sons leave this horrible country and live in a place where they can have a chance to do what every woman takes for granted. The chance to raise their own children. Here in Australia my sons have no guarantee of even raising their own children. None at all. Any mother who is not willing to take the same position, that absent binding contracts that allow men to raise their own children, the men should leave the country and go elsewhere to live their lives, does not love her son. Any mother who takes the position that her son should have no security in raising his own children hates her son. That is most mothers today. After all that I learned about the family law system in Australia, it is no wonder to me why my colleague killed himself. I got the answer I was looking for to the question of why did my colleague kill himself. If my colleague was treated even remotely as badly as Joshua was treated and has published in his books and websites, it is no wonder my colleague killed himself. Absent binding contracts to raise their children, that dead man might be either of my sons in 10, 15 or 20 years' time. So, please pass this message along. The first step for women to take is to admit what we have done. Almost none of us are even willing to admit what we have done. None of us women should be saying anything about issues in the manosphere or issues in the family law courts until we first admit what we have done ourselves. We should be offering our men help, not lecturing them and demanding ever more goodies from the government coffers. Women like Karen Strawn, Janet Bloomfield, Christina Hoff Sommers, Diana Davidson and Shield Wife should shut their cake holes until they are willing to say what needs to be said. Until they are willing to say what I am saying. Thus women betrayed our men. Thus women stabbed our men in the back. Thus women used the vote we were given and the government to do this. Let these women make videos along those lines and promote videos along those lines rather than all the rubbish they have done. Let those women demand women get equal sentencing for the same crime rather than what that hateful woman Christina Hoff Sommers just did, which was absolutely but that idea. That is the possible future false rape accuser of my son you said should not get the same sentence as a man who committed the same crime, Christina Hoff Sommers. I despise you for making the statement you made that Joshua put up on Manbook. Now, all, please pass this message along. Yours sincerely, Sally.